The cobblestone streets of Kielder echoed with the muffled sounds of their footsteps as Mark strolled alongside his daughter, Lily. The quaint village nestled in the heart of the countryside seemed untouched by time, with its charming cottages and blooming flower gardens. A sense of tranquility enveloped the father-daughter duo as they discussed the evening's meal. "So, what you feeling for dinner tonight?" Mark asked, his brows furrowed with contemplation. Lily grinned, her youthful exuberance contrasting with the worried lines etched on her father's face. "How about your world-famous spaghetti bolognese, Dad? It's been ages since you made it." Mark's eyes softened as he ruffled Lily's hair affectionately. "Spaghetti it is." As they strolled past the village square, the scent of freshly baked bread wafted through the air, momentarily distracting Mark from the shadows that lingered in the corners of his mind. He tried his best to push away the memories of the harrowing incident that had unfolded just a month ago, but the scars, both physical and emotional, were still fresh. They turned onto a narrow lane, the golden glow of streetlights casting long shadows on the cobblestones. Mark's mind had drifted back to the day he nearly lost his life. He had been out for a stroll along the edge of the forest and the massive estate that lined its edge when the attack occurred. A vicious attack by the landowner's massive dog that he had never seen before. It had left him battered, bruised, and scarred. A haunting reminder of what some would go to silence dissent. Lily sensed her father's unease, reaching out to hold his hand. "Dad, you've been so quiet lately. Is everything okay?" Mark sighed, a heaviness settling in his chest. "Just a bit stressed, sweetheart. Work and all that. But don't worry, everything will be fine." Unbeknownst to Lily, Mark's distress had a deeper root. He had become a vocal opponent of the annual pheasant shoot, speaking out against the practice that wreaked havoc on crops and local wildlife after thousands of the invasive birds are released into the countryside. His activism had made enemies, and the attack seemed like a sinister message. As they approached their cozy cottage, its warm lights welcomed them home. Mark couldn't shake the feeling the tranquility of Kielder might be deceptive. The idyllic village held secrets, and he couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that his fight for the well-being of the land and its creatures had put not only him but also Lily in the crosshairs of a dangerous adversary. Kielder nestled at the edge of a rolling countryside, a picturesque haven that seemed frozen in time. The village, surrounded by lush greenery and dotted with charming cottages, exuded a timeless charm that captivated everyone who wandered through its cobblestone streets. Quaint houses, adorned with ivy-clad walls and colourful flower boxes, lined the lanes, creating a patchwork of architectural styles that spoke of generations past. Each dwelling seemed to have a story to tell, a tale etched into the stones and timbers that stood the test of time. The heart of Kielder was the village square, a bustling hub where locals gathered to exchange pleasantries and share the latest news. A medieval stone fountain adorned the centre, its waters trickling peacefully, echoing the tranquility that enveloped the entire village. Small shops with weathered wooden signs offered an array of goods, from handmade crafts to fresh produce, creating a sense of self-sufficiency and community spirit. Streets meandered and intertwined, leading visitors through narrow alleys, framed by overhanging branches, creating a natural canopy. Towering trees, their branches reaching towards the sky, cast dapple shadows on the cobblestones below. As evening descended, the warm glow of street lights illuminated the paths, adding a touch of magic to the village's atmosphere. Surrounding Kielder, vast expanses of forest and the odd plot of farmland painted the landscape with hues of green and gold. The air was filled with the melody of chirping birds and the rustling leaves in the gentle breeze. The village seemed to exist in harmony with the natural world, an oasis of serenity amid the chaos of the modern era. Yet beneath this idyllic facade, shadows indeed lingered, not just in the corners of the cobblestone streets, but also in the hearts of those who called Kielder home. The issue of wealthy upper-class landowners owning extensive parcels of land held deeper consequences for the general public. One significant problem stemmed from the annual pheasant shoot, a tradition that, whilst rooted in leisure for the affluent, posed considerable challenges for the local community. The wealthy upper class, often possessing vast estates in the vicinity of Kielder, would engage in the release of pheasants onto public land as part of their shooting activities. These releases, intended to create ideal conditions for the hunt, had cascading effects on both the environment and the livelihoods of the locals. One of the foremost issues was the damage inflicted on crops by the released pheasants. As the birds roamed freely, they foraged on agricultural fields, causing considerable losses for local farmers. Crops such as grains and vegetables became susceptible to the voracious appetites of pheasants, leading to the diminished yields and financial strain on those dependent on agriculture for their livelihoods. Moreover, the released birds would disrupt the delicate balance of the local ecosystem that was already in dire straits. Their presence led to increased competition for food resources with native wildlife, affecting the natural biodiversity of the area. Local flora and fauna struggled to coexist with the influx of invasive species, leading to ecological imbalances that had long-lasting repercussions on the land. This, accompanied by the illegal yet ignored fox hunts and brazen disregard for other people's property, compounded the clash between the upper-class pursuit of leisure and the local community's need for sustainable living, exacerbated tensions in Kielder. The villagers, with Mark as a vocal opponent, raised concerns about the broader impacts of such practices, arguing that the unchecked privileges of the wealthy were infringing upon the well-being of the entire community. The conflict wasn't merely about the release of pheasants. It symbolized a larger struggle for the equitable use of the land and its resources. The display in land ownership and the consequences of privileged pursuits underscored a pressing need for dialogue, understanding, and a re-evaluation of the balance between individual privilege and the collective welfare of the community. All of this weighed on Mark's mind as he sat with his daughter. The aroma of simmering spaghetti sauce filled the cozy cottage as Mark and Lily sat around the kitchen table, plates set for dinner. The evening's tranquility belied the storm brewing beneath the surface of their relationship. "So, Dad, I've been thinking," Lily began, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I've decided what I want to do after school. You know that animal care course in Cheshire?" Mark paused mid-stir, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "Cheshire? That's quite far, Lily. Why not look for something closer? There's a lot of good courses nearby. You can stay here." Lily sighed, anticipating her father's reaction. "Dad, I love Kielder, but I want to explore new places. The course in Cheshire is renowned. It's in Reese Heath, you know that place. They even have a mini-zoo. I get to work with more than just sheep for once. And it's my chance to learn more about animals and conservation. You should be all over that." Mark frowned, worry etched on his forehead. "Lily, this has been our home for generations. Your family, our roots, they're deeply embedded here. Leaving for Cheshire, it's too far. I can't help but worry." Lily rolled her eyes, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Dad, it's just a couple of hours away. I'll visit, and I'll come back. But I need to follow my passion, explore the world beyond Kielder. It's my chance to make a difference." Mark's concern deepened, his voice tinged with urgency. "Lily, you don't need to go that far to make a difference. There are plenty of opportunities right here. We need more people like you that care about the land and its creatures. You can enroll in a local program, stay close to family, contribute to the community." Lily's frustration escalated, her words sharp. "Dad, you're just trying to keep me here as another soldier to fight against the landowners. I love this village, but I need to make my own choices. I can't stay in Kielder forever." Tension hung in the air as the argument simmered. Mark, torn between his protective instincts and his daughter's desire for independence, struggled to find common ground. Lily, fueled by her dreams and aspirations, couldn't understand her father's reluctance to let her go. The clash of generations echoed through the cottage, underscoring the challenges of balancing tradition with the pursuit of individual dreams in the face of a changing world. Mark's anger slowly ebbed away, replaced by a deep sadness. He looked into Lily's eyes, realizing the weight of his own fears and the impact they had on their relationship. "Lily, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have tried to hold you back. Your dreams are important. Your dreams are important. I want to support you in any way I can." Lily, surprised by her father's change of heart, felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. She threw her arms around Mark, hugging him tightly. "Thank you, Dad. I promise I'll come back. I'll make you proud." As they embraced, a sense of reconciliation filled the room. However, in the aftermath of their emotional exchange, Lily's keen eyes caught a peculiar sight on the oak table. Two of Mark's fingers, which had moments ago been the source of a fatherly caress, had transformed into something unexpected. Two sharp claws had extended from his fingertips. Lily pulled away from the hug, her eyes widening with astonishment. "Dad, what happened to your fingers?" Mark, momentarily caught off guard, looked down at his hands. The claws retracted, and his fingers returned to their normal state. He attempted to downplay the unusual occurrence. "Must be stressful. I've been through a lot lately, you know." But Lily couldn't shake the unease that settled in her stomach. "Dad, that's not normal. Maybe you should see a doctor or something." Mark nodded, a shadow of worry crossing his face. "You're right, as always. Let's not worry about it for now. Let's focus on your dreams, right?" The night unfolded in an eerie silence as Mark lay in bed, grappling with restless dreams that eventually morphed into nightmarish visions. Flashes of red painted his subconscious, vivid and disorienting. A distant, unsettling screech echoed through the corridors of his mind, a haunting melody that clawed at his senses. In the dream, Mark found himself on an unfamiliar street, surrounded by shadows that seemed to dance in the crimson glow. A cat, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity, darted across his path, its screeching reverberating through the silent night. The honking of a car pierced the air, and the blinding headlights enveloped him in an unsettling embrace. Confusion and fear gnawed at Mark's subconscious as the disjointed scenes unfolded. He tried to make sense of the surreal sequence, but the elements resisted any rational interpretation. The dream reached its climax with a crescendo of chaos, a flurry of feathers swirling around him, obscuring his vision and leaving him breathless. Suddenly, the disorienting dreamscape became too much for Mark to bear. His body tensed, and a fit seized him, the convulsions echoing the turmoil within his mind. In the grip of the nightmare, he felt trapped, unable to escape the surreal and unsettling scenes that haunted his sleep. As the night wore on, Mark's fit subsided, leaving him drenched in sweat and gasping for breath. He lay in the darkness, trying to shake off the lingering unease. The bizarre dreams left an indelible mark on his consciousness, their meaning elusive, like fragments of a puzzle refusing to form a coherent picture. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that these dreams were more than mere nightmares. They felt like glimpses into something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface of his reality. Little did he know that the mysterious visions were not just figments of his imagination. They held a connection to the secrets buried within the village of Kielder. The following morning dawned with a serene brightness that seemed to wash away the remnants of Mark's unsettling night. The sun cast a golden glow over Kielder, and as father and daughter stepped into the quaint village, a sense of calm settled around them. Mark and Lily decided to have breakfast at the Castle Cafe, a charming establishment nestled within the walls of the village's historic castle. As they entered, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods enveloped them, creating an inviting atmosphere. The Castle Cafe boasted large windows that allowed sunlight to stream in, casting warm embrace over the interior. Tables were adorned with colorful flowers, and the gentle hum of conversation created a pleasant backdrop. Mark and Lily found a spot by the window, their chosen table bathed in the soft morning sun. A friendly waitress greeted them and took their orders, the menu offering a delightful array of breakfast options. But Mark couldn't help but smile as he watched Lily pursue the choices, her excitement and enthusiasm a stark contrast to the tension of the previous evening. As they waited for their meals, the pair engaged in light conversation, the atmosphere gradually shifting from the weight of the previous night's argument. The sunshine streamed through the windows. It seemed to infuse a renewed sense of optimism into their lives. Lily, eager to move past the disagreement, shared her plans for the day and upcoming weeks. Mark listened attentively, realizing that supporting her dreams meant embracing change, even if it meant letting go of some of his own fears. Their breakfast arrived, a delicious spread of pastries, fruits, and steaming cups of coffee. The warmth of the cafe, accompanied with the delectable food, fostered a sense of togetherness. Mark and Lily savored the flavors and the simple joy of sharing a meal in the heart of their beloved village. As Mark and Lily stood up to leave the castle, the cheerful atmosphere suddenly shattered. A distant horn echoed through the village, sending a shiver down Mark's spine. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as the involuntary flashback to the disconcerting dream, the honking of the car's horn, and the unsettling scene that followed. The haunting sound of the horn dissipated, but Mark's unease lingered. His senses sharpened as he strained to discern the source of the commotion. The air grew tense, and as the distant baying of hounds reached their ears, a sinking feeling settled into the pit of their stomachs. Lily's eyes widened with realization, mirroring the concern etched across Mark's face. "Dad, is that—" Before they could finish her sentence, the truth became evident. The barking of hounds intensified, punctuated by the rhythmic thuds of hooves against the ground. An illegal fox hunt was underway. A practice that not only clashed with Mark's convictions, but also posed a direct threat to the delicate balance of the local ecosystem. Mark's jaw clenched, his gaze hardened with a mix of anger and frustration. "They're hunting again," he murmured, the memories of his recent nightmares intertwining with the reality unfolding before them. Lily's eyes mirrored her father's concern, the passion for animals fueling her distress. "Dad, we can't let this happen. We need to do something." Mark nodded, determination replacing the initial shock. With a renewed sense of purpose, Mark and Lily quickly mobilized to join the group of like-minded villagers who were equally opposed to the fox hunt. The group assembled in the heart of Kielder, their collective determination evident in the stern expressions and resolute stance of each participant. Armed with placards and shared conviction, this group was ready to peacefully protest against the hunt. The banners they held high bore messages advocating for the rights of these animals and the preservation of local wildlife. Mark, Lily, and the others formed a united front, standing in silent protest against the outdated tradition that threatened the delicate balance of their village. The air crackled with tension as the hunters, mounted on horses and accompanied by baying hounds, approached the outskirts of the village. The sound of hooves and the distant yelps of hounds grew louder, but the protesters held their ground, unwilling to back down. As the hunters reached the village square, the clash of ideologies became palpable. Mark, his eyes fixed on the approaching group, felt a surge of determination to protect what they held dear. Lily, standing beside him, mirrored her father's resolve, her youthful energy adding vigor to the collective plea for change. The villagers spoke through their silence, the weight of their protest echoing louder than any words. The atmosphere crackled with tension of opposing beliefs, the clash between tradition and modern values playing out in the heart of Kielder. In the face of the determined opposition, the hunters hesitated. The protest was a testament to the unity of the village, a diverse community bound by a shared love for their home. As Mark and Lily stood alongside their fellow villagers, the castle's shadow stretched over the square. The collective voice against the hunt resonated through the cobbled streets, carrying the hopes of a community fighting for change. Jack Millett, a figure of authority in Kielder, approached the protesters with an air of disdain. Mounted on a majestic steed, he cut an imposing figure, his expression revealing little sympathy for the cause that stood before him. The villagers, resolute in their opposition, met his gaze unwavering with determination. As Jack reined in the horse, the ominous clatter of hooves ceased, and an uneasy silence settled over the square. His cold eyes scanned the crowd, lingering on Mark and Lily, the father-daughter duo who had become vocal opponents of his practices. "Now what do you think you're doing?" Jack's voice carried a tone of arrogance as he addressed the protesters. "This is my land, and you have no right to interfere with our traditions. You're risking a lot by challenging me." Mark stepped forward, his voice steady but laced with conviction. "Jack, these so-called traditions are outdated and harmful. We won't stand by whilst you exploit our home for your own pleasure." Jack sneered, dismissing the concerns. "You're just a bunch of idealistic fools. Do you think a protest will change anything? They never do. I have the power and resources to make your lives miserable. Don't forget who holds the reins in Kielder." Lily, undeterred by the veiled threats, spoke up. "We won't be silenced, Jack. This village deserves better than you and your lot. You won't know a moment's peace whilst good people live here." The tension escalated as Jack's expression darkened. He leaned forward in his saddle, his voice dripping with menace. "You might want to think twice about crossing me. I can make sure your businesses suffer, your homes crumble. Kielder is mine, you insufferable little serfs." The threat hung heavily in the air, and the villagers exchanged wary glances. But the fire in Mark and Lily's eyes reflected a determination that couldn't be easily extinguished. The confrontation between the leader of the hunt and the protesters had become a pivotal moment. Suddenly Mark's temper, stoked by the venomous threat, ignited into an unbridled rage. His hands clenched into fists, and he felt an unfamiliar searing heat surging through him. As just as early as before, claws slowly emerged from his fingertips. He struggled to contain himself. Something was welling up. The whispers of his recent nightmares echoed in his mind, intertwining with the fury that threatened to consume him. A low snarl escaped Mark's lips as he fought to regain control. Lily watched her father with a mixture of concern and bewilderment. In the midst of his internal struggle, Mark's eyes fixated on Jack Millett, the embodiment of the impressive force that he had long opposed. The man on the horse, oblivious to the strange turmoil unfolding, continued to spew threats and arrogance. Unable to contain his surge of anger any longer, Mark reached down and grabbed a rock from the ground. In a moment of unbridled fury, he hurled it towards Jack. The projectile sailed through the air, a physical manifestation of the collective frustration of the villagers. The rock struck its target with a resounding thud, prompting Jack to recoil in surprise and pain. The crowd gasped, a hushed silence falling over the square. Mark, realizing the consequences of his impulsive action, took a step back, the claws retracting as the rage seemed to subside. Jack's face twisted with anger. He dismounted the horse, a red mark forming where the rock had struck. He glared at Mark, fury mirrored in his eyes. "You dare assault me?" he spat, a storm brewing in his gaze. Jack Millard's triumphant glare faltered as he observed the peculiar change in Mark's countenance. The usual anger and defiance in Mark's eyes were replaced by an eerie yellow tinge, a manifestation of something that had briefly taken hold of him. Jack, his bravado wavering, took an involuntary step back, his fear momentarily overpowering his arrogance. As the villagers and hunters watched in stunned silence, Lily, quick to react, sensed the need to intervene. She rushed to Mark's side, her concern for her father overriding the chaos unfolding around them. Without a word, she grabbed Mark's arm, pulling him away from the center of attention. "Dad, come on," Lily whispered urgently. "Let's get you out of here." The peculiar event had caught the attention of the crowd, and whispers of unease rippled through the gathering. Lily guided Mark through the outskirts of the village square, away from prying eyes. As they retreated from the confrontation, Mark's features slowly returned to their normal state, the yellow tinge fading. Once they were at a safe distance, Lily turned to her father with a mixture of worry and curiosity.
Dad, what was that? Are you all right?
Mark, still reeling from the intensity of the moment, took a deep breath.
Don't know, Lily. Something's happening. To me. Can't explain it.
Lily, determined to shield her father from further scrutiny, steered him towards the more secluded lanes of Kielder.
We need to figure this out, Dad. Away from people.
Jack, determined to salvage his pride, couldn't resist one last attempt to regain control of the situation. Seething with frustration and masked intimidation, Jack called out after him.
Run away, you coward! Can't face the truth, can you? You're nothing but a sick, lowly serf!
His words, dripping with disdain, were meant to deflect attention from the bizarre events that had unfolded moments ago. Jack, a master of manipulation, played the part of the scornful landowner, attempting to shift the narrative back to the villagers' supposed inferiority. The crowd, initially captivated by the peculiar confrontation, now turned their attention back to Jack. His attempt to downplay the significance of Mark's actions only fueled the villagers' resentment. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the gathering, and a few defiant faces exchanged knowing glances. Jack, maintaining a facade of indifference, mounted his horse once more, projecting an air of arrogance.
Pathetic twats,
he sneered, attempting to reassert his dominance.
Know your place and stay out of my way.
The villagers, though momentarily shaken, were not easily swayed. Jack's attempts to undermine their unity only intensified their determination. The journey home for Mark and Lily became increasingly arduous. Mark's earlier alteration had left him weakened and unsteady, his steps faltering as they traversed the winding streets. As they did, dogs, sensing something amiss, barked from the safety of their yards, their reactions mirroring a growing sense of unease in the village. As they approached Mark's house, the situation took an unexpected turn. A herd of cows, contentedly grazing in a nearby paddock, caught sight of the struggling duo. Intrigued, the bovines ambled towards the fence, their large eyes reflecting curiosity. Mark, still grappling with the remnants of the mysterious sickness that had overtaken him earlier, locked eyes with one of the cows. A strange connection seemed to form. An inexplicable energy passed between Mark and the animals. In an instant, the calm scene transformed into chaos as the entire herd stampeded away from the fence, their hooves pounding against the ground. The once peaceful street filled with the thunderous sounds of hooves and panicked lowing of cows. Lily and Mark, caught off guard by the sudden commotion, stumbled backward. The villagers who had witnessed the earlier confrontation now emerged from their homes, drawn to the spectacle unfolding before them. The chaos in the streets deepened as the runaway cows darted through the cobblestone lanes, creating a scene of utter disorder. Mark watched the chaotic scene unfold with a mix of confusion and distress. Lily, ever protective over her sole parent, tried to guide him towards the safety of their home amidst the uproar. As the night descended upon Kielder, Mark's condition continued to worsen, leaving Lily deeply concerned for her father's well-being. The lingering effects of the mysterious event and the physical strain that he endured throughout the day weighed on him heavily. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, Lily decided to call for a doctor to assess her father's condition. With a sense of worry etched across her face, she dialed the number, hoping the medical intervention would provide an answer and alleviate the distressing symptoms Mark was experiencing. The village doctor, well acquainted with the close-knit community, responded promptly to Lily's call. Within a short time, the doctor arrived at Mark's house, equipped with a medical bag and a reassuring demeanor. Lily led the doctor to where Mark lay. With years of experience attending to the villagers of Kielder, he approached him with a calm and measured demeanor. After a thorough examination and a series of questions about Mark's symptoms and recent experiences, the doctor furrowed his brow with concern. "Can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something unusual here," the doctor admitted.
I'd recommend some further tests and perhaps consulting with specialists in the nearby town. We need to get to the bottom of this, that's for sure. For tonight, keep him hydrated and warm, right?
As the doctor left, Lily was left alone with her unconscious father. A heavy silence settled into the room. The flickering firelight cast a warm glow, illuminating the worry etched onto Lily's face as she stood by Mark's side. The air seemed to hold its breath, burdened by the weight of uncertainty that loomed over their lives at the moment. Lily reached out, gently taking Mark's hand in hers. She spoke softly, her voice filled with a mixture of love and determination.
Dad, I won't leave you. We'll get through this together. You've always been there for me, and now it's my turn to take care of you. I swear.
As she spoke, Mark's breathing grew heavier, each breath a laboured effort. Lily's heart clenched with every strained exhale, the vulnerability of the moment underscoring the profound connection between the two. Tears welled in Lily's eyes as she whispered words of reassurance, her promise hanging in the air like a solemn vow. The room seemed to hold its breath, suspended in a poignant moment that transcended the boundaries of the physical world. In the quiet of the night, as Kielder slumbered underneath the watchful gaze of the stars, Lily sat by her father's side, a silent sentinel guarding over the man who had shaped her world. The heaviness of the unknown sickness and the fragility of life hung in the air, but within the walls of the small cottage, the bond between father and daughter radiated a quiet strength, a beacon of resilience in the face of adversity. As she lay with her hand on her father's chest, the frantic rhythm of his heart racing turned into real knocking on the front door. She got up to answer it, revealing two menacing figures standing on the doorstep. Jack Millard's cronies, their faces twisted into smirks embodying the arrogance and cruelty that seemed to be the trademark of their employer. Without waiting for an invitation, they barged their way into the house, their presence filling the room with an oppressive air. Lily, her gaze shifting between the intruders and her unconscious father, felt a surge of fear and anger coursing through her. "We're here on Jack's behalf," one of them sneered, glancing around the humble cottage with disdain. "He's got a message for you and your old man." Lily, her voice steady despite the turmoil within, demanded, "What the hell does he want?" The cronies exchanged sinister glances, their laughter echoing throughout the small room. "Jack says the old man needs to learn his place. We're here to help him with that. Give him a little reminder." As their eyes landed on Mark, unconscious and vulnerable, the laughter intensified. Lily, her protective instincts flaring, stepped between them and her father. "You're not touching him! Get out!" The cronies, fueled by a toxic mix of arrogance and sadistic enjoyment, made suggestive threats towards Lily, attempting to intimidate her. The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over the tense atmosphere. Lily, though frightened, refused to back down. "Get out before I call the police. We don't need trouble from the likes of you." The cronies chuckled, seemingly unfazed by the threat. "You could try, sweetheart, but we're just the messengers. Jack's got ways of dealing with people who don't cooperate." The air thickened with tension as one of the cronies, reveling in the sadistic power bestowed upon him, grabbed Lily by the waist. A scream escaped her lips as she was forcibly thrown against the wall, the impact causing her to hit her head with a sickening thud. The room echoed with the sound of assault as Lily crumpled to the floor, consciousness slipping away. Mark stirred sluggishly from his unconscious state, feeling a surge of helpless anger welling within him. The cronies, indifferent to the pain they had inflicted, turned their attention to the disoriented man on the bed. Lily's limp form lay on the ground, the room now a battleground of vulnerability and cruelty. The two thugs, seeing the opportunity to further assert their dominance, began mocking Mark. His heavy breathing seemed to be the only response he could muster, his eyes avoiding the malicious gaze of his tormentors. The room filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the cruel laughter of the cronies. Mark, despite the haze clouding his senses, clung to a fierce determination not to give the aggressors the satisfaction of seeing fear in his eyes. Heavy breaths persisted, each one carrying the weight of defiance against the injustice that had befallen them. The room plunged into a surreal stillness as Mark's eyes flickered, revealing intense golden irises that seemed to burn with an otherworldly energy. In that moment, the atmosphere shifted, as if the very air acknowledged the emergence of a force beyond the realm of the ordinary. In a swift, almost effortless motion, Mark's hand shot out, gripping the closest crony by the throat. The man, suspended in the air, futilely struggled against the vice-like grip. Punches and kicks proved ineffectual as Mark's supernatural strength rendered the assailant powerless. The other thug, desperation etched across his face, attempted to wield a small chair as a makeshift weapon. The blows landed with a dull thud, but to no avail, the chair seemingly insignificant against this unearthly power that Mark was now displaying. With a quick, decisive squeeze of his hand, Mark crushed the man's neck. A sickening crack resonated through the room as the crony went limp in Mark's grip. The once aggressive assailant now hung lifeless, a testament to the unyielding force that Mark now displayed. The remaining crony, terror etched on his face, wasted no time. He bolted towards the front door, fleeing the scene of brutality. The room, which moments ago had been a battleground, now bore witness to an unsettling transformation. A glimpse into the supernatural forces that seemed to lie dormant within Mark. His eyes, still ablaze with an otherworldly intensity, slowly released the lifeless body. The weight of confrontation hung in the air. The small cottage seemed to change into a realm where the ordinary and extraordinary collided. The crony's panicked footsteps echoed through the darkened streets of Kielder as he desperately sought escape from the horrors that he had witnessed. Fear clung to him like a suffocating cloak, urging him to put as much distance as possible between himself and the scene of brutality. But as he sprinted through the quiet village, the oppressive darkness of night seemed to close in around him. About 40 feet from the cottage, an unsettling sound pierced the night. The grunting of a large animal and the ominous clacking of claws against concrete. The man's heart raced, terror intensifying with every step. He dared not look back, fearing the unknown horror that pursued him. The cacophony of animalistic sounds grew louder, the relentless pursuit sending shivers down his spine. His breaths came in ragged gasps as he stumbled through the winding streets, the village seeming devoid of any sanctuary. The echoing grunts and relentless clacking persisted, a spectral presence haunting his every move. The crony's desperate sprint turned into a frantic dash for survival as the mysterious pursuer closed the gap. The shadows of Kielder seemed to twist and contort, concealing the creature that now hunted him through the depths of the night. Desperation etched on his face, the crony spotted a group of teenagers gathered by a dimly lit area, their laughter and chatter filling the night air. He stumbled towards them, calling out for help as he approached. The group turned in surprise, their jovial expressions fading into confusion. However, as the crony drew nearer, a sudden collective terror seized the teens. Their eyes widened, and without a moment's hesitation, they abandoned their drinks and sprinted away, leaving the crony bewildered and abandoned. Panicked, he couldn't resist the urge to look over his shoulder. His heart sank as he witnessed the glowing yellow eyes of an immensely large dog-like beast, faintly illuminated by the flickering streetlights. The creature's presence radiated malevolence, and a primal fear gripped the crony's every nerve. Frantically, he pounded on the nearest door, a desperate plea for sanctuary. The lights inside the house flickered to life, and an elderly woman peered out of a bedroom window, her face etched with confusion and concern. Just as the thug dared to hope for safety, the beast lunged at him with incredible force, the impact sending them crashing through the front door, wood splintering and shattering under the tremendous force of the attack. The elderly woman recoiled in horror, witnessing the scene that defied all reason. The night air echoed with the man's screams and the ferocious snarls of a beast as they tumbled into the darkness within the house. The abandoned drinks of the fleeing teenagers left as the only remnants of the normalcy that had been shattered. A deafening roar reverberated through the night, drowning out the man's desperate screams. In the aftermath of the chilling sound, an eerie silence descended upon the once tranquil streets. A moment later, the atmosphere was shattered once more, as the remnants of the man were violently expelled onto the streets. Tattered clothes and gore painted a gruesome tableau, a macabre display that stood as a grim testament to the inexplicable and malevolent force that now prowled the streets. Now stained with the aftermath of the horrific encounter, the cobblestone remained shrouded in unsettling stillness. The beast, having claimed its victim, now stood alone in the street where it paused. House lights came on all around as the creature stood in silence, panting and confused. A car came around the bend of the road, its headlights illuminating the form of the animal. A sudden light from the car's headlights revealed the monstrous form standing in the street, covered in the gore of the man and panting heavily. It was a monstrously large black wolf. The remnants of Mark's flannel shirt still clung to its left arm, a gruesome testament to the inexplicable transformation that had occurred. As the car approached, its headlights pierced the darkness. The wolf released another roar, the sound echoing through the night. The driver, now confronted with the nightmarish sight before them, slammed on the brakes, bringing the vehicle to a screeching halt. The wolf, undeterred, took up the entire road, its menacing presence casting a shadow over the unfolding chaos. The driver, paralyzed by fear, stared at the beast before them. In a display of both confusion and raw power, the wolf's massive legs swung, connecting with the front of the car. The impact caused the vehicle to roll back several feet, leaving a massive dent in the hood and triggering the release of the airbags within the confined space of the car. The driver, now disoriented and shocked, frantically assessed the situation. The creature, having asserted its dominance over the road, continued to pant and growl, its eyes ablaze with an otherworldly intensity. As the chaos and confusion lingered in the aftermath of the encounter, the monstrous black wolf, a manifestation of Mark's altered form, raced off into the depths of the forest. In the dim glow of the moonlight that filtered through the dense foliage, the creature vanished, leaving behind a trail of uncertainty and fear in the people that witnessed it. Within the deep depths of the creature's mind, a battle raged. Mark, caught in the midst of his own transformation, struggled to regain control over his thoughts and actions. The primal instincts that led to the violent outburst clashed with his human consciousness, creating a turbulent internal landscape. As the wolf navigated the darkened forest, Mark's mind grappled with the consequences of the night's events. Images of the attack on the cronies, the monstrous roar, and the violent encounter with the car replayed in his thoughts. The remnants of his flannel shirt clung to his form, a haunting reminder of the inexplicable transformation that had taken place. Through the dissonance, Mark's human consciousness fought to assert itself, desperately attempting to make sense of the strange force that seems to have taken hold of him. A profound sense of guilt and confusion welled within him as he tried to reconcile the violent actions he had just done to his fellow man. Suddenly, the scent of hounds, lingering from the events of the day prior, seized the wolf's attention as it sat in the darkness of the forest. Driven by an instinct it couldn't resist, the creature followed the scent, racing through the trees with an eerie grace. Shadows danced around it as it moved swift and silent. The pursuit led the wolf to a clearing where a tragic tableau awaited. The mangled body of a fox lay sprawled on the ground, the victim of a violent end. The scent of blood and fear saturated the air, creating a haunting atmosphere that resonated with the echoes of the previous day's confrontation. As the wolf approached the lifeless body of the fox,
Its primal instincts surged forward, compelling it to consider the carcass as potential sustenance. However, in a fleeting moment of clarity, Mark's human consciousness reasserted itself. A feeling of pity and sorrow washed over Mark's mind as he surveyed the remains of the creature. The brutality of its demise became painfully apparent, a stark reflection of the violence that had become intertwined with his own existence. The fox, like Mark himself, had fallen victim to a world where primal instincts clashed with empathy and understanding. Caught between the instinctual drive to feed on the carcass and the resurgence of the human compassion, Mark's conflicted mind grappled with the implications of his dual existence. The forest, shrouded in darkness and mystery, bore witness to this internal struggle, torn between the predatory urges and the fleeting glimmers of humanity that still lingered within him. Mark, wrestling with the internal conflict between his human consciousness and the wolves, redirected the creature's predatory desire towards following the scent trail. The twisted path led through the dense forest, unveiling a macabre series of scenes. Dead animals left to rot, their untouched carcasses casting an eerie pall over the woodland. Among the casualties were another fox, a house cat, a deer fawn, and a badger, their lives cut short and their remains abandoned, uneaten. The wolf's instincts, though driven by hunger, found an unexpected ally in Mark's human empathy as he resisted the urge to consume the fallen creatures. Ignoring the potential meals scattered in the wake of an awful display of leisure, Mark's determined mind steered the wolf towards the scent of the hounds themselves. The trail became a tapestry of odors, each telling a tale of the violence that had transpired here in the forest. Following the scent, Mark eventually reached the edge of the Millard estate, the looming presence of the grand property casting shadows over the outskirts of the woodland. The scent of the hounds grew stronger, intertwining with the oppressive aura that surrounded Jack Millard's domain. As the wolf stood at the edge of the estate, the flickering moonlight revealed the imposing structures and manicured lawns. Jack's mansion, a symbol of wealth and influence, loomed in the distance. The scent of the hounds, now potent and tantalizing, beckoned the creature deeper into the heart of it. Embodying the form of the wolf, he bounded across the well-manicured lawn of Jack's estate. The horses in a nearby stable, startled by the unexpected presence of the creature, whinnied and brayed in fear, sensing the primal energy that accompanied the predatory visitor. The scent of the hounds grew stronger, drawing Mark closer to the source. The dogs within the estate, perhaps sensing the impending danger, began to bark in a cacophony of alarmed responses. As Mark approached the hound's paddock, his instincts propelled him onward, heedless of the chaos left in his wake. The wolf, fueled by a potential blend of hunger and primal urge to confront the source of the scent, reached the steel door of the pen. With a surge of raw power, Mark ripped open the steel door as if it were mere paper. The strength of the supernatural force within him laid bare. The dogs, taken aback by the sudden breach, yelped in surprise and scattered to the back of the pen, their barks now laced with a palpable sense of fear. The growls emanating from the wolf's throat intensified as it stood at the threshold of the hound's enclosure, the primal desire to feast upon these animals asserting itself. The hounds, now shaking and clamoring against each other in desperation, were unable to escape the impending threat. However, despite the relentless hunger driving the wolf, Mark's human resilience fought back, his conscious mind absorbing the horrid conditions in which the dogs were kept. The pervasive stench of feces, the injury sustained from their hunts, and the overall suffering they endured in captivity. Sympathy and understanding pierced through the predatory instincts once again, and Mark bore no ill will towards these innocent creatures. Yet, despite his compassionate stance, Mark felt the control over the wolf waning once more. The relentless hunger clawed at the edges of his consciousness, demanding satisfaction. The struggle between the human and the beast intensified within him, leaving Mark caught in a battle for dominance over his own existence. Just as the internal conflict reached a critical point, the distant shouts of men echoed through the night. The realization of imminent danger snapped Mark's attention away from the dogs and towards the approaching threat. The men, likely alerted by the commotion or the distressed barks of the dogs, were closing in on him. The urgency of the situation pushed Mark into swift decision. With a final internal struggle, he asserted control of the wolf, diverting its predatory focus from the hounds. The scent of the approaching men, now within close proximity to the hound's pen, mingled with the myriad of odors of the night. Among them, Mark detected a familiar scent, one that he hadn't consciously registered until now, but one that sent a shiver down his spine. It was Jack, the man whose actions had threatened Mark's family and caused untold suffering in the village of Kielder. In that moment, a surge of conflicted emotions pulsed through Mark's being. The wolf, hungry and fueled by primal instincts, sought an outlet for its relentless hunger. Mark's conscious mind, aware of the moral implications and the wrongness of the impending act, grappled with Mark's dark impulse that threatened to consume him. With nowhere else to direct the hunger of the beast, Mark's conflicted mind made a fateful decision. He redirected the predatory desires of the wolf toward the one individual that seemed deserving. Jack, the very man whose oppressive influence and callous actions had brought about chaos and pain to the town. As the men closed in on the hound's pen, Mark, in the guise of the wolf, emerged from the shadows with a predatory grace. The scent of Jack hung in the air, thick, guiding the creature's movements towards the source of the familiar odor. The night, already laden with tension and mystery, stood witness to a convergence of fates. Mark, propelled by a thirst for justice and an unrelenting hunger from the beast, advanced towards Jack. The wolf ignored all of the other men who approached the hound's pen. His focus solely fixated on Jack, the source of so much suffering and strife. Igniting his powerful limbs, Mark sprinted on all fours with a primal determination, closing the distance between himself and the wealthy landowner. Jack, sensing the impending threat, let out a strangled cry as panic washed over him. The illusion of his dominance shattered. He attempted to flee from the monstrous force hurtling toward him. The night air echoed with the pounding of paws on the earth, and Jack's terrified cries added a discordant note to the dark symphony playing out in the heart of the ancient woods. The other men, now realizing the gravity of the situation, stumbled back in shock, their attempts to comprehend the supernatural spectacle before them overshadowed by fear. Mark, driven by a potent mix of primal instincts and revenge, closed the gap with each powerful stride, his eyes ablaze with an otherworldly intensity. Jack, otherwise driven by terror, sprinted back into his mansion, slamming the door behind him in a desperate attempt to escape the monstrous force pursuing him. However, the feeble barricade was no match for the supernatural strength of the creature. With a thunderous crash, it splintered the wood, rendering the door useless and bursting into the mansion after him. The room into which Jack fled was adorned with the taxidermized heads of countless animals, many of which endangered species, a morbid display of wealth and dominance. The light of the fireplace cast an eerie glow on the lifeless forms of the creatures, creating a haunting atmosphere that mirrored the predatory intent of the pursuing wolf. As the wolf entered the room, the tension between man and beast reached its peak. Jack, cornered by a vengeful force that had once been Mark, recoiled in horror. The air crackled with primal energy, a convergence of fates in the heart of this opulent mansion. The shadows of the taxidermized heads seemed to come alive, casting grotesque shapes on the walls. The room itself bore witness to the unfolding clash between the forces of greed and vengeance, each preserved creature serving as a silent observer to the supernatural reckoning. In a desperate attempt to fend off the werewolf, Jack grabbed his shotgun from the fireplace, swiveling on the massive beast and firing. The pellets bounced off the creature's supernatural hide with little effect. Panic seized Jack as the realization of his vulnerability settled in further. The wolf, barely flinching at the futile attempt to harm it, lurched forward with a swift, predatory glance. Jack, gripped by fear, found himself cornered and defenseless. In a last-ditch effort to escape, he frantically looked around the room, but the walls closed in on him, trapping him in a nightmarish confrontation. With a relentless advance, the wolf closed the distance and seized Jack's head with its powerful hands. The atmosphere crackled with an otherworldly energy as the pressure built within Jack's skull. His attempts to resist were futile, and the inevitability of his demise loomed over the opulent room. In his final moments, Jack's frantic gaze fell upon the mounted head of a grey wolf he had once shot in Canada. The lifeless eyes of the taxidermized creature regarded him with a cold, ironic amusement. The hunter had become the hunted, and the mounting realization of his own hypocrisy weighed heavily on Jack's consciousness. As the pressure in his skull intensified, the room bore witness to the culmination of Jack's ruthless actions and the supernatural forces that sought retribution. The mounted heads on the walls cast silent judgment on the man who had exploited and preyed upon the natural world. Jack's head exploded in gore as his life was extinguished, the blood splashing Mark's bestial face. With a grisly finality, Jack's head exploded into a burst of gore, marking the violent end of the man who had once wielded power and cruelty. The room, now tainted with the aftermath of the fight, fell into an eerie stillness. The massive wolf, devoid of hesitation, descended upon Jack's lifeless body. The air was filled with the gruesome sounds of flesh tearing and bones snapping as the creature began to feed upon the remains of the once wealthy landowner. The macabre scene of death unfolded against the backdrop of taxidermized heads, a haunting tableau that bore witness to two vicious predators, only one succeeding. The grotesque symphony of feeding abruptly halted as the blubbering cries of a young girl shattered the eerie silence. The massive wolf turned to the doorway where Jack's wife stood in shock, cradling their daughter in her arms. The sight before them was unimaginable, the lifeless body of Jack being devoured by the supernatural creature that had once been Mark. The daughter's uncontrollable sobs echoed through the room, the raw grief and horror of the scene unfolding before her overwhelming the already tense atmosphere. The mother, caught between shock and despair, clutched her daughter tighter, shielding her from the grotesque reality that now tainted their opulent mansion. The wolf, momentarily pausing in its grisly feast, regarded the grieving family with an overwhelming intensity. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen as the weight of the supernatural encounter hung heavy in the air. The village of Kielder, still oblivious to the unfolding tragedy within the mansion, remained wrapped in the quiet embrace of the night. Guilt surged through Mark as his human consciousness once more reasserted control over the bestial form. Without a moment's hesitation, he rushed out into the night, barreling through the terrified men who had just gathered the courage to attempt to enter the building. Mark, propelled by remorse and overwhelming weight of the night's events, fled into the forest. The trees enveloped him in their shadows, like a warm embrace, as he sought refuge amongst the ancient woods that had witnessed the supernatural clash. As Mark disappeared into the depths of the forest, the echoes of his transformation lingered in the air. As Mark awoke in the woods the next day, the harsh light of dawn revealing the aftermath of his activities, he found himself dirty and covered in blood. Unlike the victims of the werewolf curse in movies, he remembered everything he had done in his transformed state. The weight of guilt and the haunting memories of the night's events pressed heavily on him. With a sense of urgency, Mark did his best to cover his unclothed form, the realization of his vulnerability and the potential consequences of his actions sinking in. The distant echoes of the village awakening and the sounds of nature around him intensified his panic. Lily, his daughter, had been knocked unconscious during the chaos last night, and the urgency to check on her fueled his determination to return. Racing back to his cottage, Mark navigated the familiar paths with a sense of trepidation, doing his best to hide himself. The village, still largely unaware of the supernatural events that had unfolded, began to stir with activity of a new day. Mark's desperate footsteps carried him through the narrow lanes, past the quaint houses, and towards the cottage where Lily awaited. As he approached, the door swung open, revealing Lily standing there with a mixture of relief and concern on her face. In the embrace of the early morning light, Mark and Lily shared a hug despite Mark's dirty appearance. The weight of the events from the previous night hung in the air, but the relief of finding Lily safe and sound permeated the moment. As Mark attempted to explain the inexplainable, Lily cut him off, pointing out that by now, the situation was pretty obvious. She had heard about what had happened to the intruders from the village, and the police found her unconscious next to the strangled home invader. Lily, quick on her feet, had concocted a wild story, claiming that a lunatic dressed in a fursuit had been responsible for the chaos. The absurdity of the lie made both of them burst into laughter, a brief respite from the seriousness of the situation. However, the laughter subsided as Lily pointed out the impending return of the police. Since the rest of the village had corroborated the fantastical tale, the police had no choice but to take it seriously. Lily urged her dad to get cleaned up, preparing for the authorities who would soon arrive to take his statement. The warm water of the shower enveloped Mark, offering a momentary respite from the chaos that had unfolded. Yet, as the comforting cascade washed away the physical remnants of the night's events, Mark couldn't shake the worry that gnawed at him. The transformation he had experienced left him with newfound abilities, but it also came with an inherent danger. As the steam filled the bathroom, Mark vowed to himself that he would find a way to control the mysterious force. Perhaps, he thought, he could channel it for the betterment of the village. There was an issue with deer that needed culling, and the pheasants definitely needed to go. Perhaps managing the wildlife populations could become a purpose for his unique abilities. However, amidst the steam and the comforting water, Mark thought back to the crying child and the shocked mother. He knew that his journey was far from over. The events of the night had stirred something profound within him, a force that demanded reckoning. The realization that he would eventually have to face his own demons, confront the supernatural undercurrents that pulsed through the ancient woods and his veins. Most importantly, safeguard his relationship with Lily and the well-being of everyone he loved. There was also the small issue of what gave him these abilities. He had spied no giant attack dog on Jack's property last night, and with that realization came a worrying thought. Not only had it not been a targeted attack by Jack and his attack dog that fateful night a month ago, there was another wolf out there. As Mark emerged from the shower, a renewed sense of determination settled within him. The quaint village of Kielder, still blissfully ignorant of the supernatural forces that lurked within its midst, awaited the unfolding of the tale that transcended the ordinary. The day pressed on, shadows and secrets blending into the daily routine, leaving Mark poised on the precipice of a future fraught with mysteries, challenges, and the potential for redemption.